Как многие из вас оставляют свои личные данные в интернете? Мне
How
кажется,
do you leave your personal data in the internet? Each one of you have filled different forms for getting some discount. You have entered passwords, login, something else during the registration
мало кто
services.
при этом задумывается,
Not
что на
many
самом деле
people
мы
were
делаем. Ты
thinking about
подумаешь,
what
там,
they
ну,
are doing.
красивые
Well,
цифры
you have
и
put eight
сколько-нибудь знаний.
digits and
Вот
so
об
many
этом мы сейчас
other
с вами
letters. And
поговорим,
this
о
is what
том,
are we going
как
to speak
не
about?
продать свою душу,
How you cannot
оставляя
sell
свои
your
данные, где
soul
попало
by
в интернете. У
supplying
меня
your
будет два
data in the
собеседника. Собеседник
internet.
номер один со мной в студии — это Яна Юракова.
The first one is Yana
Она
Yermakova.
работает в
She works in the
CFCP,
research group,
аналитика информационной безопасности,
Analytic
правильно?
Informational Security, right?
Company Technologies. Привет, Яна. И у нас есть еще один гость, которого
And
зовут
we have another guest, Alexander Shvets, Director in Information Technologies and Privacy Protection for the end users, not of something but in VK ВКонтакте. So it's gonna be a conversation
специалиста по информационной безопасности и
between
практика,
information
у
security
которого,
specialist and
собственно,
practitioner
вводят логины и пароли
who
тысячами
is
пользователей.
using logins and
Миллионами.
passwords for millions of
Ребят,
users.
расскажите мне, пожалуйста, как
Guys,
же
can
злоумышленники
you
вообще
tell me,
могут
please, how
похитить данные?
criminals can steal data?
Пришла я на
For
сайт,
example,
не
I
знаю, чего,
come to site, whatever, a store site.
ввожу логин, пароль, и
I enter the login password. So what?
В этом случае злоумышленники могут
Well, in this
воспользоваться,
case,
к
criminals
примеру,
can
тем,
use,
что
for
не всегда
example,
наши
the fact that
данные корректно
it's not
обрабатываются,
always that our
безопасно
data is
хранятся в
properly
различных сервисах,
processed in different
приложениях,
services, applications,
которые
companies
обрабатывают их.
which do process this data, and one can use deficiency in the infrastructure, deficiencies in configurations, or some vulnerabilities. Same thing as an option
Если это не уязвимости,
if these are just vulnerabilities. If
и недостатки конфигурации, это
these are vulnerabilities and deficiencies of configuration, this could be malicious software which is placed in this resource and it collects everything which is introduced by the user in the window, special
на
window.
мой взгляд, вот такие вот основные.
To my point of view, these are main ways of how these can be stolen. How this can be stolen. What about
Как вы
what my second interlocutor thinks about? Well, the first part is the vulnerability of the service. The second one is from the side of the user and the device from which he enters, where he enters or she enters, whether the user does it at home in a nice or through the public Wi-Fi in the cafeteria. There could be two sides. One side is the service. The second side is the environment around the user, his phone, his notebook, and something like that.
Знаете ли вы, как злоумышленники используют
Do
эти
you know how they use this data? Of course. And how?
Есть варианты, наверное, самые
Well, there are options. The safest for us, as for users, it's when they just will transfer them and we will get calls to visit some new medical centers, medical clinics,
рекламные прозвоны,
some advertising calls about, okay, let's see, we have new services, please come to us.
самый безобидный
Well, this is the safest option
более,
if we are going to look
наверное, шире, то в
wider.
качестве последствий может быть
Then, as those consequences, we might have phishing, targeted phishing, and in those messages, they will say something that will incentivize to open this message, follow the link, provide some additional information, and then advertising calls like from the bank teller, hello, don't you want to do a transaction? Let's stop this bad transaction and transfer money to our account. Sasha, what do you think about it? Phishing, I 100% agree. Phishing is the favorite part of any third party to try to break user and all his services and try to use this data in the future, including for theft of money. This is the most popular story and the worst one when phishing is used in combination with some personal that he was broken, that his pictures were stolen, that he's going to be blocked and something like that. So when phishing is added by some call to action, and the second big story is when this data is being stolen and something else is done with this data. It's the enrichment or possibility to selling this data to some services and something else. I have a sudden question to both of you.
Скажите мне, каждый
Tell me, please, each one of you, the most impressive scenario of
данных.
using this stolen data.
Пожалуй, это Яндекс.Еда, она
Maybe
наиболее
it's
такая
Yandex
нашумевшая
Foods.
была.
This
По
was the
этому
loudest
составили
one.
целую карту.
This leakage has made a whole map, and these activists, which were making it, they started adding this map with other leaks, and as a result, this became the well of personal data of big number of people. I will go and see.
Пойду-ка я
I'll go and see.
проверю, что
I'll
там
go and
написано.
check what's in there. What about you?
Я, наверное, соглашусь. Наверное, самой громкой это была
I will
действительно
agree. The
эта
loudest
потому
one,
что
it was that particular
одно
leak.
дело, когда,
Because one
так это
thing
касается
is
одного
when this is
пользователя,
related to
когда
one user,
круг взлома
and when
была
the
причиной
circle
собственной
of
пользователя,
broken people was the user-related problem. That's one story. Another story is when this happens in such a large scale and tackles a lot of people, and this data that they didn't want to give away leaks, or it happened not in result of their lack of knowledge or unawareness.
Есть шанс вообще защититься. По пользователю
Is there a chance for the average statistical user to defend himself or herself? Who is going to save us in such cases, except for switching on your own brains? But let's be honest, sometimes our brains are not switching on. So can you tell me, please, how can we defend ourselves?
Банальные советы.
You
Это
know, the
не
basic
использовать реальные
advices.
данные,
Don't
если,
use real
для
data
получения какого-то
if
сервиса или
to
услуги нам этого
you
не
want to acquire a
требуется.
certain service and if you don't need it. For example, nobody will ask you for a passport when they will deliver soup from the restaurant. Why do you need to leave your real data for the soup? Well, there was a big story about ecosystem. Yeah.
Вот. И можно в некоторых сервисах себя вот
And
так
in some services, you can protect yourself in such a way. Or, for example, you can use virtual bank cards when you pay in some internet stores, you pay for the services. Virtual card can easily be blocked, reissued, and you can receive the new one. You shouldn't think about visiting the bank, receiving the plastic card. And the last recommendation that I would provide is to use complicated passwords. And we speak a lot about it. And right now we have analytics from pen tests. And even inside of the organizations, they request to have the passport from 1 to 6. And what about your recommendation how to make the password complicated? You can use a password generator if you don't want to think. I know nothing about password generator. How should I get a complicated password? You can create a big phrase which you can easily remember, like the line from the poetry with certain special symbols. It's going to be a big array, and if you will do it without the spaces, this will look like one big word. And of course, use the password manager so that you wouldn't forget this password definitely. Sasha, you can tell us a lot of interesting things about how can we defend end users, because who, but you work with end users. Yeah, honestly speaking, all basic things like bifactorial and passwords and things like that, they do work, but there's additional things. There are additional things which people should know and understand, that they use devices on which they have updated the operating system. And if he has an iOS and Android phone and they have the final version, they have checked the vulnerabilities. We cannot say that they are checked, but you know, if the picture offers you to update, you should do it. If the browser says that you should update, you should update. Well, it's understandable that it's difficult to press these buttons, but you say this keyword possible. But should I or shouldn't I? Because this is a part which let's leave it to the manufacturers of this software and hardware. It's their objective to discover these things. Let's imagine that all big responsible companies, they want to have this safety for the user. So if something offers you to update, please spend time and update. And then you should update it to the last version. The story with the passwords also. But I do like all the stories when we come and start forgetting about passwords. So when the user doesn't need to remember about the passwords, they have devices, and this password is a device and enter into the service which allows you to get without passwords. You can lose the device, somebody can steal it, so you have to do it when you still have it. Okay, thank you very much.
более внимательны к своим
I hope we'll become more attentive to our data. We will remember how to make the complicated passport. I had Yana Yurakova from Positive Technologies and Alexander Shvets from Contact Company. Can I call it or VK?
ВКонтакте, Вики.
ВКонтакте.
Anyway. Okay, thank you very much, dear friends. Don't switch off, and then we are going to have a lot of interesting things afterwards.